David Savage, a.k.a. Diz, and this is The Force Always.
Okay, so welcome to the show. This is Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back special. That's right, special because it's the 40th anniversary, actually today. Here in Australia it's the 22nd, but in America it's the 21st. And 40 years ago, The Empire Strikes Back graced the screens around the world and really took on the whole Star Wars saga to the next level, and was, now is a dead set classic. That's the news. It's the 40th anniversary. That is today, the 21st of May in America. Here in Australia it's the 22nd, but that is the news. There will be other news in the next episode, in the next coming days for The Force Always, but I'm dedicating this particular episode for the 40th anniversary. So let's now get into the views, as the news was about The Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary. Why not carry on the tradition in all the segments today and in the views? It's not about the amount one gets in a YouTube channel. It's not predictions. It's my story ideas that I have within the Star Wars saga. It could be a story idea in a poster. It could be a story idea in a movie, story idea as a book or whatever it is. But this time around it's going to be about The Empire Strikes Back, and something that I would have loved to have seen in The Empire Strikes Back. So what I would have liked to see is have the ending of the actual movie be not a to be continued sort of feel. I remember this quite vividly, even as a kid, and it was a very frustrating thing. When it's a to be continued in any movie or TV show, it's very frustrating. Partly it can be exciting, but mostly it's just frustrating because you've got to wait till that next time to see what happens, when, how, whatever it is. Cliffhanger type of thing is just, it's a bit too hard to handle at times. But I would have liked the Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, to end actually with a Darth Vader moment. Him going back to his maintenance capsule, and sort of like, with not much being said, but visually sort of the expression about, his loss of his life, realization, and he's now, connected love to his son, Darth Vader, that is, which is Anakin Skywalker, for his son, Luke Skywalker, as in one of the most iconic points in that movie was when he revealed himself to be his father. I am your father. That would have been a great end, being in the maintenance capsule, let's call it, and sort of having really visual understanding that he was, sort of torn. And then the actual capsule closing up, finishing The Empire Strikes Back. That's what I would like to see. That's my story idea for something that is 40 years ago, which will never happen, but it's just my story idea. Anyway, so that's the views for this time around. Let's get into the reviews. Reviews actually is going to be about The Empire Strikes Back, how it was perceived then by myself and people around me, and now, how it's perceived now. Look, I'll tell you this. When The Empire Strikes Back came out, straight off the bat, as I was about 1980, so I was about 8 years old, it was a very dull entry. It was too, spaced out. The action was less. It definitely was not a bad film, but it was just a bit of a dull entry for a kid. And I just took it on as more like a 6 out of 10. I just, that was my, if I were to think now for my thoughts back then, a 6 out of 10. I just didn't take it on great. I did think visually it was stunning, but as a kid, when it becomes a bit more adult in its storytelling, a bit more spaced out, and the pacing is a bit sort of slower, it just didn't really cut it, especially coming from the first one, which is Star Wars A New Hope. It really lost its beat. But technically today, I would give Empire Strikes Back about a 7.5 out of 10. I'm definitely not one of these Star Wars fans, the hardcore Star Wars fan community, that loves the Empire Strikes Back number one on top of their list. I don't, for me, it's not that, and it will never be that. It definitely is a great film, and I've come to appreciate that pacing since I've become older, through the decades, not just now, but through the decades. But I think, if there's anything about that film that really stood out, the psychological edge really started to come through, especially with the father-son relationship, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, especially with all the terminology that Yoda was coming out, do or do not, there is no try. It definitely was a very trippy scene, and I did not get for many decades the whole walking into the cave thing, even though it was really interesting. I was never one that got onto the bandwagon of the whole Boba Fett thing. It was great, but it was just something I never was enthralled with. If there was any character I was enthralled with as a kid, but this was a movie after, which was the Emperor's Guards. I just thought they were, dull and boring in a way, but they sort of look fantastic. But anyway, going back to The Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5, it was, so I give it a 7.5 today. It's definitely not my number one or a high Star Wars film, but with Star Wars, if you can understand, for me it's all consistent. There's always something in it that's bad, something in it that's good. Well, not just good, great. So I'm definitely a hardcore fan. I do love The Empire Strikes Back. I think it was cutting edge for then, in its especially puppetry, sets, especially where the Dagobah area, that was amazing. Like it was really done well with the lighting and the whole sort of forest arrangement. That was the Muppet Show era, and this was Jim Henson's sort of time, and Yoda was a puppet back then, and it was just photographically amazing. It was just well done. It was just fantastic. Obviously the I am your father moment was definitely quite intense. It really changed the idea who Darth Vader meant to all of us. It was, psychological warfare really sort of started to be unleashed in that film. I love the director. The director as a character in himself. I thought he was great. He approached it fantastic. He's one of those friendly type of guys that he's now passed away, but you could see he was friendly but very dedicated, and he had a really strong vision. I think the start of the film, I love the ambience to it, the look and the sound. It was just very ambient in a sort of feel. I just didn't like the end. The absolutely last shot, it was just I thought the space looked a bit like a solar system that you'd see in your schools. I thought that was it looked a bit too sort of like a solar system that you'd see on a poster in your school. And I didn't like it was a to be continued. It's the only real Star Wars that had a to be continued feel at the end, and it was just frustrating. But as a kid, in 1980. It was just it was a bit too adult at that time. Even though this is geared for 12-year-old kids, it was just a bit more like an 18 to 21 sort of feel at that time. I don't know how they would have felt at that time, but it was definitely a different. It definitely came off differently back then. The momentum for Star Wars was still strong then. And it became stronger through the decades, to the point that The Empire Strikes Back is the most favourite film by most, what I would think most hardcore Star Wars heads. But it's definitely not mine. I think it's good, but just not great. 7.5 out of 10. Anyway, that's my review. Let's get into the interviews. It's well, I asked myself for 2 questions. Well, answer for you guys out there. The first question is, what was the best thing about The Empire Strikes Back? And I'll tell you this straight off the bat. I thought the name cemented just a great visual visually, and it sounded great, and it sort of came off sort of seamless. Like you don't really get what it's really saying until you just really piece it down. It's sort of even though it's straightforward what it's meant to mean, it just flows so well that you just say Empire Strikes Back. You just don't, and it was probably the best title, one of the best titles that Star Wars come up with, as a subtitle. That was definitely the best thing about, and obviously there was, many scenes in Empire Strikes Back was fantastic. As I said before, the whole Dagobah look, the beginning was fantastic. There was many things. Now, that's my first question. That was the answer. Second question is, what was the worst thing about the Empire Strikes Back? Well, as again, I said it before, it was the end. The to be continued sort of feel was just a bit too much for a kid, and it just didn't sit right to the film to be a complete film, like a start, middle, end. And I think that's the beauty of the Star Wars films. That's where they have a start, middle, and end every single time, even though it's always going to be the same outcome. The good people win in the end, and the bad guys go down. But the whole rhyming reason in life, that's to me what really Star Wars was trying to convey, impartial. So I just didn't like the end. It was just a real frustrating sort of thing. But that's it. So the Empire Strikes Back turns 40. I remember a couple of years ago being in Orlando, sort of going through the whole 40th anniversary for Star Wars, the original, which was known as Star Wars then, and then turned into A New Hope shortly after the release. The celebration in Orlando was fantastic. It was just a great event. This is before the Last Jedi hatred sort of thing that we've all come to discover with a number, not everyone, but a number of people out there. Just at that point, it was Force Awakens time, getting into the Last Jedi in Orlando in the 40th anniversary panel, which was on the first day. Was great to see. All the big Star Wars heads were there. George Lucas, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, all of them. They were all there. It was just a great celebration. But so the 40th anniversary is now underway. You can buy a number of these goods, either online or your favourite Star Wars store. Check them out. There's a bit of a range out there. But yeah, so 1980, May 21, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back came to the big screen, and forever sort of kept going on until to this day, episode 9. And that's it. So that's the show this time around. I will be back in the next day or two with another episode for this week's news and review of The Mandalorian behind the scenes, which is gallery. It's called Disney Gallery on Disney Plus. It's very good so far, consistent. But that will be in the next day or two. But until next time, keep rocking.